Today we're delving into the world of Spongebob Mandela effects, from some of the most legendary to some that you might not have ever heard of, but possibly experienced for yourself. But first, what is the Mandela effect? The Mandela effect is a unique kind of false memory in which many people believe something happened when it never did. Often it's just something we've imagined in our minds and then assigned meaning to. But when it comes to Spongebob, they can be more vivid and unique than any other. What's so weird about this is that I remember some of these so vividly, and others I have no real recollection of whatsoever. So let's go on this journey together and see if we're all going crazy together. In the episode Naughty Nautical Neighbors, Squidward discovers that SpongeBob and Patrick are using bubbles to hold a private conversation across the street. Irritated by their constant talking, Squidward makes some bubbles of his own, imitating their voices to insult one another and ruin their friendship, believing it will finally grant him some peace.
Patrick, you are the dumbest idiot it has ever been my misfortune to know.
It works, and SpongeBob and Patrick become sworn enemies.
Then that makes you a big dummy, you dummy!
Yeah, well, that means that, so are you.
Then you're a turkey!
What's that?
That's what you are!
But then, Squidward chokes on a fork, and instead of dying, he passes out. Luckily for him, Patrick is on hand to save his life by performing CPR on him. Squidward, grateful for Patrick's life-saving help, eagerly becomes his friend. But Patrick falls asleep as soon as Squidward starts playing his music. After Squidward throws Patrick out, SpongeBob sees an opportunity to become Squidward's friend.
My back!
After SpongeBob cracks Squidward's back, Squidward calls him a friend, and the cycle continues. The episode follows SpongeBob and Patrick's battle to make Squidward their friend, intruding on his private life and turning Squidward's life into more chaos than when SpongeBob and Patrick were best friends. He comes up with a contest that will determine who Squidward's best friend will be, but actually it's just a plan to reunite them, and it works, with the two of them destroying Squidward's house in the process.
I should just walk away right now.
Just like old times. Now, some people have a unique memory of a scene just after SpongeBob cracks Squidward's back in which Squidward tries to find his keys to get into his house. He pulls out a set of keys and starts fumbling to find the right one, but finds it surprisingly hard. Some people claim it was the payoff to a running joke about Squidward and his overwhelming number of keys. But when they went back to rewatch the episode, the scene was not there. I actually have no recollection of ever seeing Squidward fiddling with his keys at all, but apparently that's something that many others have seen throughout the whole series, so maybe I'm just not paying attention. In the live-action segments of the two-part episode Party Pooper Pants, Patchy organizes a house party, but SpongeBob is the only guest who doesn't show because he can't understand the invitation.
Whoever sent this obviously has no idea about the physical limitations of life underwater.
The water has smeared the writing. Believing that the sender doesn't understand life under the sea, he throws the letter into the fire.
Well, might as well throw these in the fire.
Later in the episode, Patchy tries to promote his instructional dance videos, which Potty finds tacky. But before Patchy can lead his friends in a dance lesson, Potty's favorite band, the Bird Brains, show up.
The Bird Brains! They're better than all those other bands! But they're just a bunch of birds!
Everyone loves them except for Patchy, who thinks they're too loud. Just as he prepares to make them walk the plank, he remembers that they're birds and they fly away.
I forgot that you're birds!
Eventually, Patchy tries to fix the music problem by performing a song he wrote as a one-man band.
Yo ho, 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 yo ho! Ah!
Potty puts some earphones in and lets Patchy start performing his song, reminding his pirate buddy not to forget the flute solo.
Thank you, Potty. I almost forgot.
But as Patchy starts playing, he remembers,
I don't play a flute. I play a fife.
and this is not a flute.
Ah! Potty, no!
It's a stick of dynamite. It explodes, leaving only his head intact, which is kinda dark for a kid's show. Anyway, the Mandela effect for this episode is the whole episode. Yes, some people actually don't believe this episode ever aired or was somehow released only recently. And we're talking about SpongeBob mega fans, people who have spent their whole lives watching this show on Nick
Yeah!
yet somehow never got to this episode or only saw it on DVD. However, I feel like I've seen most of SpongeBob's episodes, and I have no recollection of any part of this episode either. And I'm pretty sure I'd remember an episode of SpongeBob where a human man blows himself up into a severed head. That's the kind of thing you go to therapy to try and move on from, not something you forget. In No Weenies Allowed, SpongeBob and Sandy face each other in a karate match, but Sandy totally destroys SpongeBob, sending him flying across town and right into a line of intimidating strongmen.
Who threw that piece of paper at me?
When Sandy finds him, she asks the guys what they're waiting for and discovers they're waiting to get into the Salty Spittoon, Bikini Bottom's toughest sailor club. The bouncer welcomes Sandy in, knowing she's one of the toughest fighters in all of Bikini Bottom.
Wow.
Got any more tattoos?
That won't be necessary. Go ahead.
Thanks. See you inside, SpongeBob.
But SpongeBob is rejected for being too weak and encouraged to go to Weenie Hut Jr.'s. Despite trying, he can't convince the bouncer to let him in. SpongeBob is humiliated by the whole experience, and even the people at Weenie Hut Jr. suggest ways to help SpongeBob get into the Salty Spittoon. Eventually, SpongeBob believes that the best way to get in would be to win a fight. But because he's not strong enough to take on someone intimidating, he settles on Patrick, making a deal with him to let SpongeBob win. But when SpongeBob calls Patrick Tubby as part of their planned trash talk, Patrick gets angry and attacks SpongeBob, who reminds him that he's supposed to let SpongeBob win. Patrick begins beating himself up, impressing the bouncer, who is impressed that SpongeBob could beat someone up without even touching them. Finally allowed inside, SpongeBob rushes in, but immediately slips on an ice cube and ends up in the hospital, where he refers to his injuries as boo-boos, and is encouraged to go to Weenie Hut General. While many people love this episode, some have vivid memories of SpongeBob slipping on the ice cube before he ends up in the ambulance. But when they come back to see the episode again, they discover that the episode doesn't show the slip at all, only the aftermath. Honestly, the joke doesn't really work if you were to see SpongeBob slip, but those who claim to have seen it are really adamant they saw it. And who am I to say that they're wrong just because I didn't see it myself? Well, they are wrong because it doesn't exist. But if this video teaches you anything, it's that we're all insane. In the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, Plankton steals King Neptune's crown and frames Krabs for it, something SpongeBob offers to fix by finding the crown before Neptune can execute Krabs. In Total Control, Plankton finally steals the Krabby Patty formula from Krabs and uses it to improve and sell his own version at the Chum Bucket alongside special helmets that, when worn, can brainwash the users into doing his bidding. With a whole army under his influence, he takes over Bikini Bottom and turns it into his domain. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Neptune's daughter, Princess Mindy, set out to try and free Bikini Bottom from Plankton's control. But eventually, the solution comes from SpongeBob using his rock energy to play Goofy Goober Rock on the guitar, freeing everyone and saving the day. The only question is, what was he wearing and what guitar was it? This one is easily the most legendary Mandela effect in the entirety of SpongeBob SquarePants' existence. It seems like everybody has a very different recollection of how this sequence played out. I know I did. I could have sworn that in this sequence, SpongeBob was dressed in all blue and playing a V-shaped white guitar, but nope. Could not have been more wrong. He's playing a brown peanut-shaped guitar and wearing all purple. It's significantly less awesome than my brain made it. I don't know how to feel about that. And apparently, this is probably the most common Mandela effect related to SpongeBob. I've seen everything from claims that it was a double neck guitar to SpongeBob wearing a wizard's outfit. And honestly, at this point, I don't know what to believe. I'm pretty sure that the V-neck guitar confusion comes from the pointy boots he wears, but as for the rest of it, I think we're all just losing our minds collectively, and over a cartoon sponge of all things. Let's continue the SpongeBob movie train since it seems so many people have memories of this movie that just never actually happened. Here's another one that seems to have come up online. Someone has a vivid memory of a scene where Plankton makes King Neptune wear a bucket as a kind of hat to cover his bald spot, but only on his chin. So a chin hat, whatever that is. But of course, that has never actually happened. You can watch the whole movie 4 times in a row, that scene isn't in there because it episode doesn't exist. However, this is one where I could maybe see the mistake. As I see it, there are really two potential explanations for this Mandela effect. The first is in the movie itself. There's a moment in the first movie where Plankton straps a bucket on Neptune's head purely to control and brainwash him into doing Plankton's bidding. So it's possible that someone could have misremembered the context and just applied something new to it. I mean, that's an easy mistake to make. The other one is weirder, and it's the only thing I can think of relating to a strap around someone's chin in a Spongebob episode, and believe me, I thought for a while. There's an episode called Pat the Horse, in which Patrick longs to become a horse. Yes, you heard me right. Patrick wanted to be a horse. And in fact, he does become one. SpongeBob tames him and rides him to work. Let's not overthink this for all our sakes. Anyway, in that episode, Patrick has a stick in his mouth for the whole episode, attached to 2 ropes. I actually had to Google this episode just to be sure that I hadn't made the whole thing up, but no, this is not a Mandela effect thing, this is an actual episode. The point is that it's possible this person confused the movie with this memory of the weird Patrick the Horse episode. I mean, let's be honest, it's not exactly an easy episode to completely scrub from your mind. Or they could have just made the whole thing up. We're gonna step outside the show and look at it from a real-world perspective, because this Mandela effect partly involves our real world. When you think of the SpongeBob logo, what do you recall? I'll give you a second to think about it. Now, quite often, the SpongeBob SquarePants logo is shown over the top of a lifesaver ring based on the one in Bikini Bottom. But here's the big question. What are the colors? White and red, right? Wrong. I thought that too. Actually, that is how Nickelodeon markets the show in the real world, adopting a kind of simplistic life ring imagery with a red and white color scheme. But it's not based on the show at all, because the one in the show has a very different set of colors, and I have no idea how I never noticed it. Or more specifically, how I forgot. The life rings in the show are actually purple and orange, 2 very different colors, which is so weird. I mean, I know that Bikini Bottom isn't real and it's a cartoon, so they're obviously going to lean into visually unique and eye-catching colors, but it's so weird that Nickelodeon would decide to market it with something totally different than the one in the show. I'm starting to think that Nickelodeon is making a giant effort to gaslight us with delightful insanity. SpongeBob SquarePants is such a surreal show in its own right that it tends to lead to some really weird Mandela effects. I mean, we have an episode where Patrick becomes a horse just because he wants to, so I guess that's to be expected, right? Or maybe we're all just losing our minds and inventing things that never actually happened. I don't know, man. I just like cartoons.